Hey, welcome back everybody. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to be talking about financial education. How many of us out here today know about financial education? It's quite simple once you understand the structure and how it works. So I will be taking you through three key components that could definitely change your financial situations. We have people like Donald Trump, Robert Kiyosaki, Paul McElroy, who have actually proven that the formula works. And you don't have to be a millionaire to successfully accomplish this formula. You just got to scale it to accommodate your financial affordability. So please, before we jump into the video, without further ado, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and leave us a comment. And yeah, really be appreciated. Thanks. Alright, the first key component is what we call financial statement and how this works. There are four main keywords that make up the structure, and that's income, expense, asset, and liability. Now we need to be mindful, whānau, that when we think about financial statement, we also think about our jobs and and how they affect us. And it's like this, eh? So when we have a job, our income, right? So the top box, how it says income, that's where our weekly wage goes into. And the thing is, our first line of expense, whānau, is taxi. So we've got to understand that when we get paid, our first line of expense goes out, and that's taxation. Now, after tax comes all the expenses like rent, food, travel, and all the other expenses that come with it, like loans, debts, automatic payments. So it's purely like this. If you can see this picture, and picture on top of income is your job. Now what happens is it goes down through the income column, and then it goes into the next column, which is expense. And basically with all your expenses, once they go out, you pretty much end up going out the side of their box, and you end up being just poor anyway. So all the leftover money that you have there, it ends up getting spent eventually. So what I want us to think about, whānau, is if we take a look at the next two boxes that are under income and expense, they're labelled assets and liabilities. Now, if you don't understand what they mean, people, it's purely like this, eh? So asset is something that you buy with your money, eh? Something that you buy with your money could be a house, could be a car, could be commodities. And commodities could consist of oil, food, gold, silver, money bonds, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all those types of things. If I know, that's in the column of assets. Now, with liability, it's everything that we buy, and majority of the time we've been taught, even going to school. I understand that our children out here are being taught that we need to learn here at school, and then we gotta learn how to get a job, and when we get a job, then we gotta go up in the next best thing. The next level after getting a job is saving money to buy a property and buy us our house. And a house can also be a liability, whānau, if we really think about it. Also, a car, there's a lot of liabilities, eh? I'll name a couple. So we have a car, we have a house, we have pets. We have, hey, this is a hard one, but it actually is a liability, and that's children, especially at a young age. Having children is a liability, finally, because we've got to understand, with children and animals, the older they get, the more they're going to cost us, finally. You know, the more they eat, the more things we've got to buy them. And yeah, so those are some of the things that are labelled as liabilities also, and which brings us back to the understanding of financial education, finally, knowing how to utilize these assets that you buy. You know, that's the difference between if you bought a car that you just drive around or you drive to work. Hey, to me that's an asset, because at the end of the day you're using that car to get to work to make money. But versus having a car just to oh cool, I have a mean car. But being mindful that even though you use that car to go to work, finally, it also has expenses, like petrol, warrant, rego, you know, those things. They actually play a part, so it actually becomes a liability. I want you to actually picture that, because like a lot of us out here will be thinking, no, it's still generating money. I'm still generating money by using the car to go to work. But it doesn't actually work like that, finally. It's the vehicle you use to go to work, like I explained a little bit earlier, it uses gas. You got to think about the maintenance. You got to think about all those things. If you've got a diesel car, you got to think about road user charges. You know, all these things are expenses. So that's what determines it from being in the asset or liability column. So versus a car that maybe you're actually renting out, if you know what I mean. So if you had a rental car, the money that's generated from it being rented out to people, what happens is you use a portion of that money to run your to actually sort out your running costs. So just a portion of it, and then the rest of it comes back into the income column. So that's the reason why I'm trying to explain to you how this income straight into the asset column works, But other than that, we'll move on. We'll move on to so property, houses. So you buy your first house, you move in, and you have expenses. Finally, you have water rates, you have land rates, we have insurance, we have maintenance. So those are four things that I can actually think of at the top of my head. But yeah, those are the expenses we have for a property that we've just bought, and goes into the liability column. Now, versus this finance, say for instance we were to buy the same property, we shift it into the asset column, and what we do is we rent their property out, right? So if we rent their property out, finally, and we think about the cash flow that comes out of their property, and that's what separates the two properties, because one property generates income. So it goes, your income to buy the house goes straight past expense, and it goes straight into the asset column. Now the asset generates money, and that money goes straight back into the income column. And the good thing about these things, Whānau, is it's 0% tax on your assets. You as an income earner, yes, you pay tax. But when you have a asset that generates money, it's zero to none taxation. The only thing we've got to think about is also the expenses that come with their rental property. But that's one of the first key things I wanted to talk about with financial statement. But right now we're going to move on. I'm going to show you the next column, which is financial quadrant. When we look at financial quadrant, everybody, if you can see, we have 4 letters: E, S, B, and I. Now, the letter E, if you can look under the letter E, it says employee. So, if you understand that you go to school, you learn how to learn about getting a job, then we go out there and we go and get a job, right? So when we get a job, we fall into the E column. And the taxation for the E column finally goes like this. If you're making anything over $17,000 a year, you're falling in the tax bracket of 30%. Right? So anything over 70 grand a year, you fall in the tax bracket of 33%. And that's something to be mindful about, when we think about going out and getting a job. Like I explained a little bit earlier, our first line of expense is tax. So that's for quadrant number 1. Now quadrant number 2, with the S on it, is for people that are like small businesses, doctors, lawyers, builders, plumbers. They fall into the S category, whānau. Now, we really have to be mindful here when we're moving into those types of entities, whānau. They don't really tell you these things, but I'm sharing this here with you today that if you're a small business owner and you work for the business, the tax you get in is you get taxed on the business itself, and then you also get taxed for you working for the business, right? So you get employee tax, and you also get business tax. So I think at the moment that quadrant sits at almost 60%, whānau. 60% of your income for your business and yourself. So that's that quadrant. So we move on to the next quadrant, which is quadrant B, and that stands for big businesses. Now, big business owners that have 500 plus employees, the government has taken initiative to supply these people with tax benefits. Now, how tax benefit works, whānau, is purely like this. If you are creating jobs for people in the community, if you're helping people get into work and all those sort of things, the government has set up an incentive, which is tax benefits, whānau. And you know what the tax bracket is? 15%. I guess it's quite hard to get into that type of that quadrant when you're first starting out, but that's exactly what that B quadrant is all about. So we'll move on to I quadrant, and I stands for inside investors or investors. Now, with this quadrant, whānau, like I explained a little bit earlier about assets and income and all that sort of stuff, investors, they pay 0% tax, right? Only because they know how to use debt to generate cash flow, and that's pretty much where we want to be putting our mindsets, whānau, is purely in the two right hand columns, which is B and I. I understand that we have to start off in E and S, but we don't want to be sitting there for too long, because of if we take a look at the taxation and how much percent you have to pay at the end of the day, that'll determine your decision. So that's a sort of a holistic understanding, whānau, on financial statements and how they actually work in financial education. Now, which leads me to the last component, whānau, which is investing your leftover profit, whatever you're left with. So we talk about investing, whānau. We want to invest in assets. So like I explained earlier, in the asset column we have oil, we have food, we have cryptocurrency, we have real estate, we have bonds, and we also have gold and silver. Now, I want you to take a second to think about this one, because like how I see it, whānau, is basically there is nothing wrong with the cryptocurrency space. I just think it's a little bit too volatile to start out on, especially if you don't have any knowledge on how it works. And it's purely like this. To give you an understanding on how a bank works, right? We look at ourselves and we look at the bank. Now, when we go to work and we have leftover money that we have left over and we leave it in the bank and we put it in the savings account, what actually happens there, whānau, is the bank has a set percentage rate on how much your money can make interest by being inside their bank. Now, it's like this. A lot of the times, you're lucky. We'll take this to the high end. You're lucky to get 1% return on your money that sits inside the bank. A lot of places could be 0.6, 0.7%, and that's quite low if you really ask me, for a whole year. Now, versus, say for instance, we took our profit money, our money that we have left over, and we invested it in a commodity, which could be silver, gold, right? Now, silver and gold, they tend to fluctuate, but more so the value of their gold increases over time. So I want you to take a quick look at this. So what this understanding is about is we have what they call like real money and we have fake money. Now, the two understandings about real money and fake money, people, is the real money is the commodity, right? That's silver and gold. That's God's money, right? Versus the dollar that we have today, that we go to work and we get paid for. Right. Now, every single year, whānau, when we get to the end of the year and we come into the next year, right, inflation goes up, right? The price of your butter today could be $8, but next year it's going to be $9, right? So we need to think about, as inflation goes up, the valuation of your dollar goes down. So your $20 you have today, it will no longer be $20 next year. Inflation will make sure that $20 becomes $19. And that's what we need to be mindful about, whānau, is when we talk about real money and fake money, that's the understanding there, eh? So what I advise people to understand and do is, say for instance, we have this commodity, right? We go out there, we use our fake money, right? And we go and buy a commodity. Now we buy this commodity and we take this commodity and we store it. We store this commodity just like Joseph did for the Egyptian Pharaoh in the beginning. They took a fraction, right? And they stored it. And that's what I'm saying here today, whānau. We buy their commodity, we take it away, and we store their commodity, eh? Now, the high risk about this, whānau, is finding a secure location to house this commodity. Now, once we've housed this commodity, whānau, I can guarantee you, by the end of the year, the return profits on your commodity that you have put away to save, it will not lose value. If anything, it will have its same value in the next year. And then you're wondering, hey, but how's that? It's because inflation went up. That made your dollar, the dollar that you held, lose value. That doesn't mean that the commodity that you have loses value. And when we think about commodities, whānau, we got to think about exactly how how the commodity fits in the pyramid scale of life. And gold and silver's been around a very long time, whānau. It's been around from the beginning of time. So all I know is that these commodities will still live on past our time. So that's something to be very mindful about, when we're talking about these things, or when we think about these financial transitions. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment, and that's where I want to share this with you fellas, because it's purely like this. I see a lot of us out here, we're struggling with these everyday budgets, but they can actually be used in the right way. And hence the reason why I draw conclusion against that whakatauki, that saying of money's the root of all evil. Well, it really ain't, whānau. It's what you do with that money that's the root of all evil. But yeah, anyway, that's us. That's the understanding for today, whānau. And once again, I'd like to say thank yous. If you can, please subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. But yeah, mā te wā, whānau.